guys, welcome to our spoilers review of Pet Sematary by Stephen King, and that is the novel, not the movie. If you want a review of the movie, go see our other video. Basically, Pet Sematary, the book, does not go the way you would expect it should go. Usually when you hear the plot, you know, father raising his son in grief, you expect that half the book's probably going to be like the lead up, and then the other half of the book is going to be like dealing with a demonic child. Not how it goes. This book is more like a contemporary magical realism novel, and it happens to have a horror story tacked in at the end. Like the last 50 pages are when he resurrects his kid. It's really weird. It's not what you expect. It's still good though.
I'm surprised it took us this long to read the Stephen King necromantic novel.
I'm surprised it took you that long.
Okay, so this book had kind of like a mythological existence in my life because it's the one Stephen King novel that my mother read, and she told me about it when I was 11, that she read this book and my father was out of town and she just couldn't sleep because it scared the shit out of her. And so I was like, okay, like this is gonna be the one that like fucks me up. Like I was nervous to read it, and then I started reading it and I was just like, mother, okay. So I could see how this book could be scary to someone with newborn children, because it kind of plays into the whole like not being able to save your kid and just how big and scary the world is and how everything feels out of your control. So that didn't really hit too much with me because I do not have children. I have accepted the world is out of my control. But that's for me. Like, I would probably feel different if I had a little tiny person who
was
running around and making fucking beeline for that road. So the main plot of this book is Louis Creed moves his family into this house that is between a very busy road and a creepy dark forest. He has taken a job to work in a clinic in the university because he wants to step back from that super busy life and be able to have time with his family and be there to raise his children.
First day on the job, he really sticks his feet in the water when there is a traffic accident and a guy named Victor ends up getting hit by a car and ends up kind of basically bleeding out and dying on his table.
Victor has died and he's in the room, and then Victor kind of sits up and it's like, the barrier must not be broken. And he's just like, oh my god.
Like, holy shit.
What is happening? So you find out later on in the book that because he tried to save this guy, Victor in death came back to be like, I will now help you. But alas, I am dead, so my timing is not great.
That should have been one of his lines.
Later on it also explains that he can only warn, he can't really directly influence, so he's kind of constrained by specific rules. The point is there is a Micmac burial ground that's been corrupted by a Wendigo, and if you put anything in that soil it's gonna come back, but it's gonna come back wrong. People have put pets in there, pets come back.
Pets are a little wrong, it's fine.
They're not aggressive, one of them was, but it's just, he describes it as like they're doing an impression of being an animal. Being
around them, they always kind of smell like dirt and decay, and you know, you don't even notice you're doing it, but you'll just kind of go away. Don't touch me, that's wrong. He meets his neighbor is Judd. Judd is the father he should have had. And they strike up a relationship. Then one day their family cat gets hit by a car and Judd is like, does your daughter, Ellie, really love this cat? And he's like, yes. And he's like, okay. I have a secret! And so he brings Louis to the Micmac burial ground, and that was probably one of my favorite parts of the novel, where he's just like, yeah, we gotta go over the deadfall, and then he's like, where if we go? Louis is really I don't understand, that's a death trap. Yeah.
And he's like, just don't think about it. Just don't think about it. And they go over, and they're in this kind of creepy swamp, and Judd's just like, if you hear something, just ignore it. If you see lights, just ignore them.
You hear creepy calling. It's just a loon. Really, dude? Really?
And he goes with it. Louis is like, okay. Because at the same time, he's feeling really exhilarated. He's like, this is exciting. I don't know why I'm really into this. And they go, they bury the cat, they come back, and there's kind of a weird time thing where he thinks this adventure would have taken all night. They left at midnight, they come back, it's only 2.
Yeah. Just like he kind of loses time. He doesn't really remember how he got back. He just kind of gets back and is like, oh shit, I'm back.
And then George comes back, weird.
Yeah, he comes back and, you know, first Lewis is like, oh, that's great, you know, the kid can have her cat back. But, like, he quickly realizes that the cat shouldn't have been brought back. Even Ellie notices a change, even if she doesn't know why she doesn't like the cat anymore.
And so then Lewis and Jed have this really interesting conversation where Jed is like, I thought I was doing Ellie a favor, but that's a lie, because once you know, you're gonna always, like, you're gonna make up reasons why to do it, like, and you're gonna tell yourself these beautiful, nice little stories of why you should, like, bury your dog up there or take your cat up there. That's just, it has a strange power and it culls you.
Because the other thing is, too, Judd feels almost, like, indebted to Lewis because at one point Judd's wife, Norma, had a heart attack and Lewis was right there to take care of her and get her to the hospital, and, like, basically she got there, like, perfectly fine, like, almost no bad side effects to her having this heart attack. So, like, Judd's like, oh, you know, well, in repayment for...
The little cemetery's like,
yeah,
this is the best way to pay, like, make it up to him. Save the cat.
Yeah.
Save the cat, Judd. And then Lewis is like, has anyone buried a person up there? And Judd is like, no, don't think about it. Don't think about it. Yes, someone did bury a person up there. It did not go well. But don't think about it.
Now, I mean, like, this is taking up, like, this sequence is literally taking up, like, over half the book. Like, 3/4 of the book is, like, this sequence of, like, you know, stuff kind of going wrong, but not really that wrong. Just kind of like a sense of foreboding, like, because you know this is coming. And, you know, Lewis is enjoying his time with his kids and flying kites.
Oh yeah, that's like the last thing before the kid dies is just this, like, perfect day. You didn't know it at the time, but his last perfect day was. And I'm just like, oh,
yeah.
And, okay, my favorite part of the perfect day, it's just so, like, minimal, but it, like, made me laugh out loud, is because it's just Lewis alone with Gage, and they go to fly the kite, and Lewis does this commentary where, like, Gage says something, and then Lewis translates it into, like, very formal language.
Father, I require more string.
And it made me laugh. It was cute.
That was adorable.
And then we were kind of both torn on the death, how they handled the death, because I really liked it.
And I was kind of like, well, it kind of takes away some of the tension of the novel, and that, like, there was kind of, like, a missed opportunity in the way he told it, because, like, you have that perfect day, and then the next scene is the funeral. And you're like, hold up here. Hold up, what happened? Like, what?
And so then he kind of starts talking about what happened in fragments, while at the same time talking about the funeral, and I saw it as a pretty accurate representation of how my brain went when I went through, like, severe trauma and grief for, like, the first time as an adult. How time kind of fractures, and how Lewis just is going through his, like, what happened over and over and over and again. If he had done this differently, his son would still be alive. Or if he had done this differently, his son would be alive. If he had grabbed him at this point, his son would be alive. And just, I related to that completely.
I mean, I feel like he could have done it, like, the same thing but different in a way. Like, it could have, like, played out, like, you have Gage running to the thing, and then he saves him, and then you find out that they're at the funeral, and it's his imagination. Like, you could have found a way to put tension in there, and then done the whole, like, I don't know.
It just shows, like, I guess it's because it's the breakdown of time. So, like, if he had shown it, then it would have taken away from the time breakdown, because, like, we're stuck in Lewis's perspective.
Yeah. It's not bad, it's just not how I would have done it, but it's fine.
You get so mad at his father-in-law because they get into a fight, because throughout the book you find out that Lewis does not have a good relationship with Rachel's parents. After one of their dates, when Rachel brought Lewis home, the father did the stereotypical thing of taking Lewis into his study and being like, I will write you a check if you, like, so you can pay through all of your medical school if you just never see my daughter again.
And Lewis was like, fuck you and your money, like, go shove it up your ass.
And then you find out that just how kind of not great Rachel's family life was, because she had a sister who became very ill, and Rachel was left home alone with her to take care of her one night when her parents had gone out, and the sister died, and that just became so like baked into Rachel's personality and like so afraid of death. And it was a big moment in the book when Lewis is like, no, like, they shouldn't have left you alone with your dying sister. Like, that's fucked up.
Yeah, like, not
you were
cool.
8.
Like,
And that just feeds even more into Lewis's hatred of his father-in-law.
so his father-in-law basically comes up to him at the funeral and is like, I knew that it was a mistake, her marrying you. I knew that she was just gonna get tragedy and sadness and like...
You turned my daughter into like a waitress.
Yeah, just like the worst stuff to say to people on like a normal day, but he's saying it at this guy's son's funeral, or grandson's funeral, and he's like drunk and everything too. So it's just like, it was like, you were like, just like, what the fuck, dude?
But I guess it's also a representation of how like grief can bring out the worst in people.
Yeah. 100%. Not that he had a great
No,
relationship.
not
to
that they
begin with.
did. Like, I'm not defending the father-in-law. That was shitty. So Lewis ends up sending his wife away, his wife and his daughter away, so that he can do the thing that he's been thinking about doing that he shouldn't do, but he's gonna do it anyway, and that's dig up Gage, bury him in the Micmac burial ground, and he's like, yes, no, it will be very scientific. I will have 4 days to make a judgment call on whether we can do this, and if it doesn't work, I will, like, take him back.
Yeah, no problem. Return to sender. Like, and he's kind of like deluding himself too, because he's like, oh, you know, people deal with handicapped children all the time. It'll be fine. But like, the kid's not going to come back handicapped. The kid's going to come back like wrong, demonically auraed wrong.
Because by this point, Judd tells him the story of what happened when good old Billy was brought back and became this demonic creature that knew all of their evil secrets.
Like, yeah.
All of the worst things about them, he knew. And he's just like, well, he's 4. What's the worst that could happen?
Oh, I don't know, Lewis. I don't know.
The sequence of him digging up Gage was kind of like, probably the slowest part of the book for me, because it was just like very like, and then I did this, and then I bashed my knee against a tombstone, and then I did this, and then I did this. It kind of got interesting again when he's like trying to like run off with the body wrapped in a tarp, and he sees a couple walk by, and he's like, oh, it's funny how thin the line actually is. Oh, like, you know, just one step and you're grave robbing.
That was like the most interesting part of that sequence. Like, the rest of it could have been skipped.
And then he goes and he buries Gage.
In the meantime, though, you have Ellie freaking out because she's been having nightmares that something bad's going to happen to Lewis, and she doesn't want to get on the plane. She doesn't want to leave. She knows something bad is going to happen. And so they get all the way to Rachel's parents' house, where Lewis shipped them off.
Favorite city in the whole wide
world. They get there, and, you know, Ellie's freaking out. She's been having all these terrible dreams, and she knows the name of Victor Pascoe, the guy who died and has been trying to warn Lewis, and Ellie has never heard this guy's name before in his life.
And Rachel's very much aware of this because she's like, man, I was trying to shelter my daughter from any form of death. There is no way that she would have heard this.
Like, none. Rachel just, like, gets infected by her feeling of foreboding and is like, oh my god, I need to get back there as fast as possible. So then you have, like, what is it, like, the Home Alone scene, basically, of the mother trying to get back home as, like, quickly as possible, and of course she misses her, like, she gets flights out.
The universe turns against her because the Wendigo's reach is long.
And so, you know, she gets her flights booked and she manages to get on the last flight home, but then she misses her connection.
So she has to rent a car.
And then so she rents the car, and then
she kind of starts falling asleep on the car.
Finally she stops and pulls over to take a rest, and she goes to start the car, and then the car's not working, and she passes Salem's Lot.
She's like, Jerusalem's Lot. That sounds like a good place to lay my head down, and I'm like, yes! Go there!
And at the same time, you have Judd, who knows that, like, Lewis is up to no good, and he's like, I'm gonna stay up, I'm gonna wait for him to come back, because I obviously know he's probably at the graveyard, and I'm gonna, like, stay up and wait, and I'm gonna confront him and make sure he doesn't bury his son in the graveyard.
But the Wendigo's reach is long.
And Judd falls asleep.
So Lewis buries his son, and then he goes to bed, and then there was, like, the most lyrical part of the book. As he's falling asleep, Lewis just goes on this rant about, okay, his happy place is Disney World. And throughout, like, at the beginning of the book, when he's driving and he's stuck with his family in the car, he's, like, fantasizing about, like, dumping them all on the side of the road and driving to Disney World and getting a job as like a medic in Disney World and all life would be good. And then he starts thinking about him being in Disney World with his son, driving around this thing, this like the little ambulance that's not actually an ambulance because Disney, we gotta hide it. We gotta hide the ugliness in the world. The world is completely artificial. And then it starts getting more like negative, and then he starts thinking about death and how death is this constant companion throughout your entire life. Like you get into the shower, death gets in the shower with you, and just all the little ways that death can take you away, and how like death is the one true God. And I was just like, oh my God.
It was like a really interesting and memorable rant.
Yeah, like it was super good. And then there's another like minor rant where he's thinking about, because he knows that everything's gonna go badly. Like he kind of accepts it at this point, and he's thinking about the family that's gonna move into the house after him and how they're gonna like be this like hoity-toity couple, and they're gonna be happy, and they're gonna drink like fancy wine, and they're gonna brag to their friends how they got such a deal and how they're so modern that they don't really care about the fact that this house is probably haunted because something bad happened here. You know, they're gonna live their nice little life, and then the last line is just like, maybe they'll have a dog. I'm like, oh!
But yeah.
So Gage comes back and he's a busy boy.
Louis is sleeping and he goes through Louis's medical bags and takes his scalpel.
And then he goes for Judd.
Now, this is the sequence where I had to suspend my disbelief for a minute because it's a toddler. Like, yay big. Like, kick it.
You can't get your mind behind a little toddler brandishing a scalpel being like, you fucked me once, Judd. You didn't think I'd be here to fuck you back.
Because as my brain is trying to supply toddler with scalpel trying to kill you, it also, like, supplies the necessary wires to make it jump through the air. It's like, no, that's not realistic.
So Judd majestically trips over the cat because the cat, Charge, is Gage's sidekick. And they kill Judd. And then Rachel, she goes first to Judd's house, and she finds Judd, and then she sees Gage, and she's like, oh, like, she sees Gage, and Gage looks to her as her dead sister. She's like, this is it. She's here to get me. And then she's like, wait, no, that's my son. Gage, come here. And Gage comes running like, Mommy, I brought you something. Stabby, 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 stabby.
Judd and Rachel are dead. And Louis, like, wakes up and he sees, like, muddy footprints.
Well, first he's like, I'm gonna have a bachelor breakfast. And then he sees the muddy footprints and he sees Church sleeping on a car and he's like, oh no.
Something bad has already happened.
And then he sees his wife's stuff in the car and he's like, double, oh no. Judd is dead. And then Gage comes at him and hunts the toddler, gets him with the syringe of morphine, and
gives Gage an overdose, and Gage dies. But at this point, Louis's brain slowly starts to snap like a giant bit of cord.
And then he sets Judd's house on fire, and he's like, yes, no, I waited too long last time. Yes, that's what happened. Yes, I waited too long. Come with me, Rachel. And he goes up to the Micmac burial ground without supplies. It's like, I guess I will have to claw with my hands.
Yeah, like,
that's creepy. Then it switches over to one of the other doctors who works in the clinic, who Rachel had called him earlier to be like, have you heard from Louis? I haven't heard from him. And so he goes to the house and he sees Judd's house on fire. He sees Louis with a bundle walking in the back, and he kind of starts to follow him, and he kind of like feels like the call of like the Wendigo, but he manages to get out.
Yeah, because he's like, oh no, what am I doing? This is creepy.
this is good, because Louis is like, come with me, Steve. Help me bury her. He's like, what are you doing? Don't climb that deadfall. It's easy, you just have to not think about it.
Steve's like, you know what? I think I'm gonna move to another state now. Bye.
Halfway across the country.
That's enough of that.
And so the epilogue is Louis at home playing solitaire, and then the door opens and he feels a hand on the back of his shoulder. Hello, darling.
So, it was a good book. I really enjoyed it. Like, I don't know, if you're looking for a book to write an essay on, this is it.
It's very nihilistic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's very like, there are no happy endings.
Yeah, but it was good for that.
Yeah, no, it was good. I really liked it.
And I was really happy with, like, my magical realism novel that was most of the book. Like, literally, the last 40 pages Gage is alive. That's it. 40 pages. But, like, I don't know, I would have...
And when you think about it, it works. Because I don't think you could physically do any more than 40 pages of a maniacal
It's true.
toddler
It's
running
very
around
true.
with a knife.
But it's just not what you expect.
We've been conditioned by Hollywood.
Yeah. It's very true. But, so, yeah, it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
Give it a read. It's not that long.
No.
On King standards anyways.
And, like, you, like, burn through it.
Yeah. So, that was our review of this novel, guys, and we will see you next time. Bye!